The Anderson Museum of Contemporary Art in Roswell, New Mexico houses not only paintings by Mr. Don Anderson, but also over 400 works, which are the fruits of the 40 years of the Artist-in-Residence Program, of which Mr. Anderson is the patron. Don and Sally Anderson walk us through their museum in this intimate tour.
You know, when we talk about individual pieces, there are over 400 works in this museum. And Sally and I each know every piece that's in the museum, how we got it, and where it was hung. And so we have shared with a tremendous amount of knowledge about the works in this museum. Okay, these are sharks that are made from golf bags. The sculptor is Robbie Barber, and we once had a show of several sharks with a seafloor in the first gallery. And these, even the little bitty one is a vacuum cleaner, but the others are just big golf bags with wooden heads. And they get a lot of attention of people coming in here. Sally, you want to?
Well, he's a wonderful guy. He's got obviously a great sense of humor, and just he teaches over in Texas, and he's just amazing. And he always produces something that makes you howl with laughter.
Right, yes, right.
This is, I think, a crown jewel of his production. This is an outside artist named Bernard Schatz. He comes from the South, and it means he doesn't show in galleries. He's not a regular artist. He's just kind of off the beaten track. And he is a character, and he calls himself L15. Right. So you can get a little idea of how wacky he is. And I think this is kind of, it's kind of lovely and wacky at the same time. And people could say, well, what does it mean? And you'd say, I don't know. I just like to look at it.
He's been in many places. Earlier on, he was in Los Angeles running an art store where he sold art by the pound.
Gives me a little feeling.
So you can understand the guy's kind of crazy. This is the work of Robin Shores. He's one of the few sculptors working in stone that we've had. And of course here in New Mexico it's very hard to find stone. I think this stone all came from Indiana. It's limestone. And the other figures, that's a casting in plaster. This is plaster, and this is stone. And he did a wide variety. Usually, subject was women.
Did he finish? I don't know this sculptor.
Yes, right.
Did he usually have finished parts in his show, for instance? Did he have a whole?
No, this was.
He just did parts.
Yes, right.
Oh. This is our friend Janelle Wick from Nebraska, and she works on unstretched canvas. We have a number of her pieces, and we just think the color and the way she lays on the paint, and then the evocative, sort of churchy, housey kind of thing that she portrays they're really wonderful, and the colors are great. So.
These faces were a birthday gift to me, where the artists made a piñata, and their heads are formed on tennis balls, and it was out in the back by the kitchen that I just whacked it open and preserved these heads. So, and they're very good likenesses of those artists. I see he had a cigarette there. that's missing, but,
Well, they've caricatured themselves very nicely, I think.
yeah.
Well, did they all do each one of themselves?
Yes, each one artist is his own, see? Right,
Yeah.
that is, right.
So she's got her hair kind of wild, a little
Yeah,
wilder
yeah.
than it usually is.
And this one is the son of
Jerry, yeah.
Jerry Williams, who lives in Sweden.
It's fun to look at them.
This is a photograph of one of the first artists-in-residence group. There's Sally. She was pregnant with Dameron, the first baby born on the compound, and there's Bill Midgette back there, David Reed, and Will Goodman. He's still around, and all the others there.
It was a nice group,
Yeah, right.
and we watched it all develop.
Yeah, right.
Allison Sarr is very well known now. She, also her mother is a very reputable artist. And she did this, she was here for a short period, right?
Yes, right.
Because she had just gotten married and she missed her husband enough that she wanted to go back to
right,
New York.
right.
But she did this, and it was an outdoor piece. And unfortunately, it had a nice, great big sign saying "Soul Service Station. Come service your soul here." She's a African American, and unfortunately, it was outside for a week,
Yeah, right.
and some kids came and knocked off the head and took the sign and
Took the dog, I think.
took
yeah,
the dog.
yeah. They were all found in a ditch about a mile away, so.
So we put it back on, put it back together, and painted a landscape behind
Right,
it, so
yeah.
it looks like an outdoor piece now.
Right, yeah, right.
So, but we just really love it, and Allison has gone on to, I mean, she shows all over and, gets a lot of publicity, and she's just a lovely, warm person, and
Right,
she's
yeah,
very
right.
grateful for the time here in Roswell. It was,
This is a very important drawing, and I'll tell you more reason later, but this is the drawing of Luis Jimenez's proposal that he wanted to do this stretched out sculpture that would be over 100 feet long, and he proposed it and had some interest from an El Paso bank, but then they rejected it. And after that, I met Luis, and the friendship that lasted until his death about 2 years ago. But the first piece was Progress One. The whole piece is collectively called Progress. And if we go in the next gallery, we'll see the final work that came out of the Progress One start, and the series, of course, was never finished because Luis's career developed so fast in it that he had other obligations and couldn't really spend the time to complete this. The stagecoach was going to have my two boys up on top driving it, my wife looking out the window, and I guess I was going to be looking out the window too. But it never got that far along. Now this is the Progress One piece that I just pointed out in the other gallery. And the work is done in fiberglass, much like boats are constructed. And the piece is first done in oiled clay, and then a split mold is made around the clay and removed and reassembled, and this fiberglass is placed inside the mold and working from the smallest parts out to where the sculptor's got a place to go out the bottom. And then that split mold is saved so that if he wants to make, he usually made 6 copies of each piece, but each piece was unique in that the painting was never the same. This piece was vandalized in an outdoor show in Houston, and the various parts broken off. I mentioned that because Sally pointed out the other piece that had been vandalized. Also, this piece was flown to the Edinburgh Festival in Scotland, and they had to line up a special 747 with a door big enough to get it in. I can't imagine what it cost to transport and return it.
I love this painting. It's a takeoff. This artist always refers to older paintings of the image. We have it over here of a painting that's in the Louvre by Géricault, a very famous painting called The Raft of the Medusa. And this is, of course, a truck that has suffered the same thing as the 19th century ship that went down. But one of the things I love is, well, I love it all, but especially the things like the water, the skateboarder up there on the big wave. But we had a young woman come in who was a truck driver, and she said, well, that's exactly right. It's exactly true. That's just what those trucks look like. So it's true both to, I think, the 19th century painting that inspired it and to modern trucking.
Right.
And there's just a lot to look at in it.
The painting is by Scott Green, and he did his MFA work at the University of New Mexico. And this painting was done for his master's thesis. And he showed me a photograph of it in his studio. And it was very hard for him to even move it around. The thing was so big.
Love to. This is one of my favorite paintings in the whole collection. And it's, I think, a great work by this artist, Elmer Schooley, whom we call Skinny, and who he and his wife Gussie were a core couple in the life of the compound for years.
Right.
After they were here in 1978 on the grant, they bought a house across the street. And as one of the artists said, they give you everything on the grant, including surrogate parents.
Right.
I mean, they were just wonderful mentors to all of our artists.
Right.
But this painting, it's all, of course, as Skinny usually does. It's grasses, and it's abstract, but it's not, because you can see how the grasses are playing in the light. And but it's just this majestic presence, I think, and the play of light and the depth of you can see where you could practically walk into this grassy field,
yeah.
And yet it's what you look at is the light and the color. He referred to it at one point, it was one of his favorite paintings, and he called it my homage to Chartres Cathedral, the stained glass windows in one of the greatest cathedrals in the world. And I have always thought of that, like what he told me. So it just never ceases to be a source of inspiration to me. It's really a great work, and it used to be in our home, and I miss it.
Right.
But it's nice to have it here on public display so everybody can see it.
Skinny sold it to another buyer, and that buyer discovered that the doors on his house were not tall enough to get the painting in. And so it came back to Roswell, and I heard about it and bought the painting. And fortunately, the doors on our house are big enough for it to get in, so that accounts for it being here. The bar was done by David Bogus, and he worked in, you can see some of the ceramic things that are adorning the bar. The rest is copper and all the details and everything are ceramic. And he was on the grant for a year, but did other works, but during that time, I think on and off, he worked on this bar, so
Yeah.
it's quite a monumental achievement.
And this is also an homage to an older painting, right?
Yes, you want to,
Sure. Well, we have a reproduction of it. It's Manet's famous bar at the Folies Bergère, which is in the Courtauld Institute in London.
right, yeah.
And so that's why he had his girlfriend pose in that exact same pose for the opening for the catalog.
Right,
So she stood in for the barmaid in that other the older the
Right.
Impressionist Manet painting. So
Right.
that was a lovely in joke. But it's an amazing
Oh, it
creation.
is. And he made it without having any idea of where it was going to go. You know, after the artist leaves, they've got to take all their work with them. And fortunately, we had just built this new gallery, and this was the ideal home for it. But it was a finished piece before he ever knew that there was a home for it. Yeah.
What would be a bar without cards?
Yes, that's right.
Why don't you tell us about this wonderful piece?
It's a wonderful piece by a wonderful guy, our Patagonian, Argentinian friend, Kike Meyer, who has a wonderful sense of humor and is a total character, as you can tell from the details of this. I mean, the Mickey Mouse in the hand and the little pigs tussling on the ground. And it was just an irresistible work and just belonged here in our museum, I think, right?
Right, yeah.
And you can go on and look at his brain is entirely
Right.
lined with cards. I mean, there's a great deal to study in here.
Right. You know, when we talk about individual pieces, there are over 400 works in this museum. And Sally and I each know every piece that's in the museum, how we got it, and where it was hung. And so we have shared with a tremendous amount of knowledge about the works in this museum.
Well, and the artists are like family to us. You know,
Right.
we try to keep in touch with all of them if we can.
Well, this is a room that we're both very familiar with. I painted all of the paintings in here, and Sally pretty much saw them develop as they were works in progress.
This is one of my favorite paintings because we took a trip, cruised up and down the Red Sea and then went through the Sinai Desert. And this is called Sinai. And we were on a bus going through this landscape. And the bus stopped and Don got out and picked up a handful of dirt and rocks.
When I did this painting, I ground up that rock and used it as part of the pigment in this painting. So this painting contains part of Mount Sinai. And it was originally reversed. These two panels were opposite. And there's a picture of it there that these two come together and make the mountain. And then quite a long time after that, I've started looking at it and separated it and liked that and repainted it so it would join either way. Well, the landscape has appealed to many artists. I don't paint from the scene, I don't photograph or sketch, and they're all really imaginary from experiences I have seen, but not in any way of any sometimes I give them names for a place, but they were not painted there. There's one on the back wall with that little village that acts closest to being a scene that Sally and I lived in that little village for a while. This piece is the second in the Progress series, and if you remember the drawing, it's not exact or in any way how it was originally planned, but and it turned out this is the last piece because Luis just got too busy with his career to where he was just not able to continue and spend the rest of his life doing this. I think he spent 6 years here, was it?
Yes, that's what you
right.
said, yeah.
You notice there's a door to get into this piece somewhere, and the two elements have steel pipes in them that plug into a piece down, a steel receptacle down in the base, and that's quite a bit of strain on those. In fact, Luis couldn't find pipes strong enough. I provided the steel pipes, and they were heavy weight drill pipe, and he made, I think, 2 other castings of it, and the pieces tend to separate because of the weight of them, and he, on the later pieces, used that rope as a cable between them to keep them together. But okay, Sally's going to talk about this piece.
This is a piece by an old friend of mine and Don's, James McGarrell, who's a rather well-known contemporary artist. And this is a celebration of food. It's called The Biggest Pantry, Dawn, Noon, and Night, I guess. And it's the most beautiful evocation of, I mean, it doesn't look as if you could eat the stuff, but it's all painted so beautifully. And the colors, the incredible riot of colors and paint is just really splendid, as well as the 3 wonderful landscapes of dawn, noon, and night. And I just always, again, see new things in it. The apples with the bites out of them, I'm not quite sure what that's supposed to mean, but it's a lot of fun. And all the is it pork chops or
right.
you know, and different kinds of meat lying around, and oysters no, those be clams or oysters anyway. Yeah. And a lot of wine and just a good time. It's the most riotous pantry I've ever seen in my life. I'd love to have one like that. Right. Anyway, he had a good time with it.
But this piece is, what is the name of it?
Matter of Fact.
Matter of Fact. And it's done by Edie Song. She's an American of Chinese descent, and started this piece when she was in graduate school in Louisiana, and when we acquired it for the museum, it was probably half this size, but Edie lives in Santa Fe now and just compulsively keeps making more of these and adding on. I don't think we could go any farther with this, but that's probably the final stage of it.
she just loves doing that.
Yeah, right.
Having those shapes, and if you study it, it's interesting to look at, you know.
Well, that's the kind of piece that's so unique that if you come in this museum, there's something that you're going to see that catches your eye. You may not like much of it, but some of it you'll relate to. And
one of my favorites, and he's called Lucky the Immortal, and he has, I think, I haven't counted, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, it's about 7 ears on each side, and 3 noses, and 4 arms, and he's incredibly crafted out of this beautiful, what do you call it, intarsia?
yeah.
I mean, the craftsmanship is just stunning, and then the humor is wonderful. I mean, I don't know what he does with that, but
No, right.
it's interesting, whatever it is.
Right, yeah.
You kind of wish you had one of your own, just for the heck of it.
Right.
But it's, I don't know, he gets everybody's attention, and I think he's marvelous.
Right.
He's very appealing somehow.
Right. This piece is by Bill Midgette, and Sally's first husband. And he did a series of city paintings, and this one is the revolving door. I like the illusion of it because you can kind of walk up like you're going to go right out with this guy, or someone else can stand there and move on out and look like they're coming out of the painting. Bill Midgette was an extremely important person in the program. I think I've talked about his influence before, but the Roswell Museum also has a monumental painting of his, one of the big Indian series paintings, the powwow. It's a very large piece.
Okay, well, Howard Cook was the very first artist in residence, and so, well, maybe second.
Yes, right.
The first real one who came full-time and for a long time. And this painting is just remarkable to me because it looks at first glance like an abstraction, but you look at it, it's called New Mexico No. 3, and it's New Mexico. I mean, it's the colors and the shadows and play of light. I mean, here are the mountains and the shadows on the mountains, and then this wonderful green and ochre colored lower part. And to me, it just encapsulates the whole spirit of New Mexico and the mountains. Howard went back and forth between, quote, realistic works and abstract or semi-abstractions, and I think he did such a wonderful job with both.
Now this Howard lived in Taos for many years, and the Taos landscape is that broad, flat expanse with the mountains behind it, and he did several paintings, but this is the most abstract of the ones he's done, but it's the influence of the snow mountains and the plains in the foreground.
When you look at it one way, it's completely realistic to me, and yet when you step back, it can seem like a total abstraction. So I think it's a wonderful combination.
Right.
Well, there's a lot of nice stuff here too that I haven't looked closely at. This was bigger, right?
Yeah,
He cut
right.
it off.
This old house on Lee Avenue.
Is it on
Yeah,
Lee?
right, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Wow, I still love these Lisa Allens
Yeah,
too.
right.
Really good.
And I guess we're turned to the right here.